One of the greatest obstacles in communication is managing nervousness. Nervousness is something actually quite normal in all forms of communication, whether it is interpersonal relationships, giving speeches, intercultural communication, and of course narrative performances. But perhaps the first step in learning how to control and manage your nervousness is learning about it. So, in this lecture we will cover three main areas concerning nervousness. First, we will cover the similarities and differences between narrative performances and conversations. Second, we will go over understanding narrative performances and nervousness. Lastly, we will cover some basic ways to deal with and manage nervousness. But let us first start off on a more positive note by going over the similarities between narrative performances and conversations. You already bring some basic skills into your performance by way of your basic conversation experiences. First, both communication styles require thoughts to be organized in a logical way in order for your messages to be understood, so both conversations and performances practice this skill. Second, messages in both instances are always tailored to your audience. We will cover more about audience analysis in a later lecture, but for now understand that you probably already do this naturally when having conversations. Third, when conversing or narrating you are telling a story in order to have a maximum impact on your audience. We build up, adjust our wording, change our tone and so on. So keep in mind that as you begin your narrative performances that you already possess some of the basic skills due to the similarities with having conversations. Now although there are similarities, there are also distinct differences. First, there is a focus on incorporating both performance and narrative together, which differs from basic conversations. Oral interpretations require more detailed planning as well as preparation. It tends to be more purposeful and depends on sources outside of one's personal experiences. Oral interpretation also requires greater use of vocal fluctuations and varieties for specific characters and messages. It is often the case that in the narration process you will play more than one character and will use your voice to make distinctions between them. This overlaps with the third difference between the two, in that oral narrative requires a different delivery method not only in vocalics but also in body language and overall delivery. Though we will cover body language more in detail in another lecture, it is important to know that you will use more of your non-verbal skills in performance than you would in conversations. Now that we have a basic understanding of the similarities and differences between narrative performance and conversations, let us now cover a better understanding of nervousness. A term normally associated with nervousness in the field of communication is known as communication apprehension. This is defined as the general fear of communicating with others, particularly in public or group settings. There are different forms of communication apprehension which cause people to refrain from personal interactions, professional relationships, and most social situations, which can result in miscommunication as well as misunderstanding. In the most extreme cases of apprehension there is an actual phobia of speaking in front of an audience, and this is known as glossophobia. This form of apprehension is defined as a severe fear of speaking in public and often results in physical symptoms such as freezing, weakness, sweating, redness of the face, and an accelerated heart rate. In this course we are more concerned about a common form of apprehension which is most known as stage fright. Stage fright is defined as a general anxiety over the prospect of communicating in front of an audience. Though this is a great fear for many people, it is also quite a common fear. The level of anxiety and fear due to communication apprehension and stage fright is very much determined by a number of factors, but let us explore some basic reasons that are most common. One main reason may be due to what is known as trait anxiety. This is apprehension due to an individual's personality. For example, it may be that a person is very introverted rather than extroverted, which causes them to be hesitant due to who they are. Another common reason is state anxiety, which is apprehension derived from external situations. For example, it may be that a person fears being scrutinized, judged, or failing in front of others. There is also what is known as scrutiny fear. This is anxiety produced by those who have a fear of being looked at or watched, often feeling very uncomfortable being observed while conducting an activity. This may be due to not wanting to be the center of attention or perhaps a fear of being judged harshly and rejected. Lastly, there is fear of revelation. This is anxiety produced by revealing who we are and what we think, and the possibility of those things being held against us for some reason. When a person shares things that they may think, like, or appreciate, it may be held against them, causing them to fear what others think. Though there may be more reasons for apprehension and stage fright, these tend to be the more general reasons. It is important for each person to examine themselves and determine the general reason for their own apprehension in order to determine the best way to manage and control their nervousness. Now that we have a general understanding of nervousness and the reasons behind it, let us cover some basic ways we can manage and control it. Though there are a myriad of ways and methods, we will focus more on some of the basic practices related to speaking and performing in front of audiences. Perhaps the best way to approach nervousness in this context is to perceive it as a way to develop greater confidence for yourself. First, recognize and understand your own nervousness, and then look at stage fright as a tool to motivate yourself and challenge the growth of your confidence. Use this challenge to develop your confidence to prepare properly and practice your performance to do the best job you can. Make up in your own mind that you want to succeed by keeping your mind off the negative aspects and focus on developing confidence. Next, try to practice what is known as positive nervousness. That is, turn the nervousness into something which motivates you, such as enthusiasm or excitement. For example, anyone who plays sports understands the idea of using positive nervousness. They practice for a competition, and when the time comes, they often experience a great deal of nervousness, but they are taught to manage that nervousness and use it as a form of enthusiasm to compete and motivate them to win. In the same manner, you must find ways to turn your nervousness into something positive, and in this way manage it to motivate rather than hinder you. Third, remember that nervousness is quite normal and is experienced by almost everyone in the same position you are. The feeling is nothing unique, but quite common, and in reality, most of the time your nervousness is not as noticeable as you may think. Do not expect perfection, but focus on progress, realizing that your fellow peers are experiencing the exact same feeling. Fourth, be self-aware and admit your anxiety, making it a goal to identify the reasons behind it. Although most experience nervousness, not everyone has the same reason for anxiety. Make it a goal to pinpoint the exact reasons behind your own, and in this way, you can make a plan to manage the specifics of your nervousness. Next, work on acquiring speaking and performance experience. You are already attempting to do so with this class, but work on other ways to practice, such as having your family and friends critique your performance, or perhaps taking more of an effort in group or class meetings to speak up and voice your opinions. Keep in mind, most people fear public presentation merely because they have never made a practice of it and are therefore unaccustomed. If you begin to find ways to practice, you will become more accustomed to voicing yourself out loud. Sixth, always be sure to thoroughly prepare yourself for your performance and presentation. It surprises me just how many of my students lack preparation on their presentations, and the thing is, you can almost always notice when someone has not prepared properly. Preparation does not only entail gathering content, but practicing the performance over and over to determine what works and what doesn't. A general rule to remember is that 1 to 2 minutes of presenting takes approximately 1 to 2 hours of preparation. While preparing, try to visualize how you desire to come across, and when you prepare and practice, observe to see how far off you are from what you envisioned. And lastly, always make sure you make physical preparations prior to your performance. Be sure to get enough adequate sleep and be well rested. Make it a habit to eat a healthy meal, usually high in protein, to help your mind and body function. Try to refrain from sugars and heavy carbohydrates. You may also want to choose clothing which will be comfortable for you and feel good, such as comfortable shoes. And lastly, be sure to do some form of light physical exercise, such as a stretch or a brief walk. There are a number of other ways one can work on managing their own nervousness, but for performances, these are a great way to start. And with that, we will conclude our presentation. Remember, you already bring in some basic skills and experience for performance just by way of carrying on your daily conversations. What we focus on are those differences. There are also a number of reasons why a person is nervous and has apprehensions, but being your own unique individual, you must make the effort to discover the exact reasoning for your own anxieties and identify them. And lastly, we covered some of the basic ways you can begin to focus and manage your own apprehensions. Remember, nervousness never goes away, but we can use it as a means of motivation to gain confidence and improve how we perform in front of others.